Good morning, everyone. Hi, Tony.
Hi, good to see you, Auntie.
Hi, good to see you. My God. Tony and I, we connected through online and haven't really met in person. I heard a lot of good things about you. I'm going to introduce you a bit to the audience. Also, we have Nicholas here. Hi, Nicholas.
Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, perfectly. Hi, everyone.
Okay, cool. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our session today. This is the first session of the day. I'm very happy to be able to participate in FolksFest in moderating the first session in Sunday. The topic of the day is about digital ID from authentication to data sovereignty. This is personally the topic that I personally very interested about, but have very little knowledge. So when I got offered to moderate the session, I'm very happy because I'm as excited as learn from the speakers as much as you guys. Um, I will first, I think, introduce our speakers here. We have Nicholas. Nicholas is the co-founder of Arise Network, Web3 enabler wallet and payment solution. So Arise enabling business to easily adopt Web3 and provide blockchain-based services to everyday customers. Um, and will help unlock mass adoption of Web3 technology. So I'm happy to have you here, Nicholas. Good morning.
Good morning, Andrea. Thanks for having me
Good
today.
morning. Yes.
Thanks for the intro as well.
Yeah. And then also we have Tony here, Tony Rose. Tony Rose used to serve as the head of product for Atala Prism. During his tenure, he created and executed a strategic vision for top-tier enterprise software, especially for decentralized identity, self-sovereign identity or SSI, and verifiable credentials as well. And right now, you are the co-founder of the Dogen, assistant that provides personalized guidance for DAO participants on the Summon platform. Oh, sorry, through interactive cash and in-game crypto payouts. So yeah, very interested as well to learn about what is the Dogen, which is your new gig at the moment. Yeah, Tony.
I would call the Dalgen more like a side project experiment, really getting
Okay.
into playing around with all the new AI stuff. So I just sort of use the Dalgen as a sandbox to explore different ways to apply generative AI. Right now, we just started a AI music video show, and we're
Mm-hmm.
using our characters that we built in the Dalgen as the hosts
Mm-hmm.
of the show. So it's just a lot of fun playing with the new technology.
So what is your main project right now?
Uh, right now I'm just kind of exploring. I'm in between, and taking the opportunity to do side projects like the Dow and like we just started doing the AI music video show. So we're working with a bunch of music artists and helping them make AI music videos and showcase them on a weekly podcast. So just fun things like that. It's the holiday season too, so taking some downtime and eating some. We just had Thanksgiving here, so we had some. Where I live, I'm actually on a boat. I don't know if you can tell, but
That's
where
a
I live,
boat.
we have Dungeness crab. So they're these giant crabs that this is the season where we can go and catch those. So we're eating a lot of yummy Dungeness crab for our holiday season.
Damn, that's so interesting. I'm hungry right now. It's very early. I haven't had breakfast. Okay, so maybe we can kickstart the discussion. I think the audience is also very interested to learn from you guys about specifically about digital identity. So as you know, like the concept of digital ID has a lot of progression in the past year. Now we have like biometric authentication, we have SSI, which is also a quite new concept. Even a digital wallet is also a form of digital identity. So the first question would be like, from your opinion, like how has the concept of digital identity evolved beyond the traditional authentication methods? And what do you think are the driving forces behind it? And like especially what are the roles of decentralization, blockchain, and of course, artificial intelligence or AI? Maybe Nicholas can start the discussion.
Hey, I would actually be more comfortable with Tony starting the conversation since he's more of an expert. Um, but essentially, decentralization of ID or sort of the whole concept of ownership of your own identification.
Recording in progress.
Starts with the concern of privacy, right? So essentially, it starts from privacy, and then from there, we're looking into access, like who is allowed or what is allowed to access our data. And then the other concern after that is basically like understanding what will that data be used for. So overall, the blockchain enabled the capabilities for people to actually own their own identity. And there are several providers, several
Is he breaking up for you also?
Yes, yes. Nicholas, I think your connection is breaking up. Oh, I think you're back. Can you give it a try? Okay, maybe while Nicholas fix the connection, maybe Tony can kick in to
Sure.
jump in. Yeah.
Sure. And it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to talk to people all the way on the other side of the world. As I mentioned, I'm in Half Moon Bay, California, just pretty close to San Francisco, if you don't know where that is. But it's a good question. And one of the ways I've started thinking about what and how to describe what Web3 is when people ask me, or I try to explain to family and friends like why I'm so excited about this, is because we want things to work in the digital world the way that we've learned to expect them to work in the physical world. And the Web3 industry, and I sort of use Web3 as an umbrella term. It can be some people can take that controversially, but it's shorthand for things like layer 1 blockchains and SSI, things that use cryptography to give ownership. Sort of really, this is what I think it boils down to, is we have this innate sense of how ownership works in the physical world. If I have a thing, it's mine. In digital, it's grown really fast. Digital has really taken over all aspects of life in the last 25 years or so, right? And it's been based upon, I think, when you start to consider identity and assets, because whether you're looking at identity or things like assets like money, NFTs, the thing really is about a sense of ownership and control of that ownership. And then privacy becomes really important as well, especially when you start to think about, information, whether that's personal or, otherwise, who gets access to certain information is important. So I think that's really the key of what's driving, the Web3 industry as a whole, is to have ownership work in digital like we want it to and like we expect it to. And the evolution of digital identity and digital assets has primarily been around a custodian having some service they offer you, whether that's email or banking or social, and even digital things like digital credit cards. They're not yours. They're not in your wallet. So I think this is where SSI comes in, is answering that question of how do I own, hold, and control my data just like I can my Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's very interesting, right? That's not something that most people will think about, like who really got the hold of your data and how much of ownership you have of like your own identity, like online or offline. So maybe the next question would be, from your experiences, I know like you are quite the OG, especially in like in the Cardano ecosystem. So maybe during your time, have you encountered or can you provide an example of innovative digital identity solutions that you think is a good example that, like um, provide its benefit to empower individuals to control or manage their personal data. And how are these solutions reshaping user experiences and security? Maybe if you can provide some examples or like be it like projects or maybe just an idea even. Hi, Nicholas. Welcome back.
Welcome back, Nicholas. Yeah, sure. I think it's really important to remind the audience and ourselves that this technology is still very much emerging, and they're very challenging. It's always hard to get new technology to market. This is particularly hard because in order for decentralized identity to work, first the standards had to be developed, and this has been done through the W3C. And that's really a critical piece of things that are related to identity, because interoperability has to be part of the package. And really the only way to do that is through open source. So the industry has made a lot of progress there. And the first implementations of these standards have been done through the Linux Foundation. And there were scaling issues with those first implementations. And so I think we are now at a point in time where second and maybe even third generation implementations of those standards are starting to make their way into production. And Atala Prism is, one example of those. I worked on that for about 2 years at Input Output, as you mentioned. And that project is already a lab at the Linux Foundation. And so it will be graduating, assuming the community responds well to the quality of the code and these kinds of things, which, I feel very strongly about because I was there, and I feel like the team did a fantastic job at implementing a really enterprise class implementation of those standards. And I think that's really been a missing key ingredient of bringing decentralized identity to market is developer tools that are easy to use.
Oh, now interesting to learn more about that. Okay, maybe Nicholas, we were on the second question already. So I was asking Tony if he got any example maybe of like a product or in a solution so far in a digital identity that you think worth mentioning in terms of they're able to empower individuals to control and manage their personal data. Maybe if you have some projects or solution to share.
Yeah, so again, apologies for the previous round. My connection was really bad. Cut off.
No worries.
No, I think what Tony said is sort of on the fringe, right? On the fringe of ownership of your own identity. I think I'll probably talk on the other side of the scope that's really famous right now. It's the World Token sort of initiative. Sam Altman's approach to basically having world identity and then placing all these orbs across the world and then sort of like canvassing the data from scratch, right? So essentially what they're doing is they're basically capturing your biometrics and then they implement it on their ecosystem. And the idea, of course, from there is to evolve into other services where that data set identity will be used, right? So World Token is probably the most recognized one at the moment, just because of the fanfare, just because of the token that they released and everything. I mean, for me, the main point is to sort of what Tony said was interoperability, right? Essentially, the idea is to understand what ID will be used for. And for now, even though people don't trust governments, right, essentially, but the governments are the ones that actually have the data since the day you start, right? Essentially, when you're born, you have the data. And even though people don't trust governments, but at the end of the day, when things go bad, they all run to the government, right? So I think I wouldn't say technology. I think the other advancement would be how to build trust for people to actually provide that data. If you're Web3 native, I think it's quite clear. You do understand the benefits of it. But if you come from Web2, or you've never interacted with Web3, then they sort of don't understand, okay, so how how am I going to make my data my own? Because in the beginning, they already think that their data is their own, right? They already considered it that way. But then they're like, okay, fine, government entities can have my data because for them it's normal. So it's sort of, how do you build trust? What will be the next level of market approach for these technologies so that Web2 users are able to actually trust it? So in my opinion, technology is there. I think it's starting to be mature. It's just about, will people want to use them, and will people trust that system to use them?
I think you hit the nail on the head with one of the other innovations I think that's come out of the SSI community, which is how do you build trust ecosystems? Because this is one of the hardest parts of doing decentralized identity and decentralized data ecosystems, is getting the actors together, and critically, who is the verifier that cares about the data?
Exactly.
I think it's useful to think about one example of a similar kind of network that's been in the world we can all understand is a credit card network. These are really similar to sort of a general case of what an SSI trust ecosystem looks like. You have in a credit card network really just one piece of verifiable data. It's the card number. And you have issuers, holders, and verifiers. And it's all, it's like this sort of demonstrates how powerful trusted data can be, that 16 digits, when issued, held, and trusted to be verified, can power, a very large portion of the global economy with credit card, payments based upon that. So how does the average person or the average business or community build their own trust ecosystem? And this is really part of Web3. It has to go beyond code as law, because we can only go so far with that. And I think the expression of property rights in code is quite nice. And you still need governance that talks about other things. That's part of the reason why one of the pilots, it wasn't huge from the number of people impacted. However, from the perspective of demonstrating how this technology can be put to use end to end, including the governance frameworks, I put a link to the Student Reader Student Scholarship Project. And this was a lot of fun because we issued student IDs from students that were in the trust framework from a partner school in Kenya. And they gave the students the student IDs. That student ID, along with course completion credentials, allowed the student with their wallet to interact with an oracle that would release a scholarship. And the way that the funds for the scholarship were raised was by selling the book, The Foundations of Decentralized Identity, as an NFT book. So a portion of the proceeds from the sale went directly from the contract on chain to the multi-sig wallet that goes to the oracle, which releases it to the student, all under that governance framework. So it's, I think, a great example of how to put all of these pieces together. All those same basic patterns apply, whether it's healthcare or supply chain or, some community organization of some sort. There's lots of examples. Just back to your question, one of the maybe more interesting ones is the Maori in New Zealand.
The Maori.
Yeah, the indigenous.
The indigenous, the indigenous.
So they have some really interesting catalyst proposals from Fund 10, and they've been funded. They did not get funded in Fund 10, but they have been funded, I believe, in Fund 9. And their application of SSI is, it's almost like the perfect use case, because it's a community that's has this tradition that goes back many generations, and they're able to express that tradition digitally through SSI. It's quite cool with governance and stuff. So definitely worth checking that out for a good recent example.
In Fund 9, I'll check it.
If I could add something, right? I mean, Tony is in Half Moon Bay, right? So California. I think the identities scene there is very, very different from Southeast Asia. That's another parameter that needs to be discussed about, right? So essentially, when people discuss about this or people try to get more information, you actually need to understand the whys, right? So basically, what is the data, right? Then is the where. Where is the data stored right now? And then the other one is why would you need this data to be accessible? And then when you need it to be accessible, right? And then when you think about it, in Indonesia, where we are from, KYC, or sort of know your customer, is prevalent across multiple platforms, right? And there's a friction when people have to do KYC. Like, they just don't want to give their data. But if you go to a private building in Indonesia, you have to give your ID. And they give it willingly, right? You give your ID. Why? Because this is a private area, right? But the thing is, when you go to a restaurant for an Indonesian, right, they don't ask you for your ID, right? But you don't go there as a visitor of a private location, even though the restaurant is owned by someone private, right? You actually consider yourself as a customer. So when you consider yourself as a customer, then essentially you don't understand why you should have to give your ID. I'm already a customer. Why do I need to give you my ID? Right? I'm already here. But within an office building setting, you actually have no problem with giving your ID, right? And then when we see like all these Web2 platforms with KYC systems, they're forcing people to ask for their ID, and then it just drops, right? No one wants to provide their ID. But that's because they consider themselves as customers already. I'm not a visitor on your platform. I'm a customer. Why do you have to treat me this way, right? So I think it's more about, for Southeast Asia, it's more about how do you present the idea of identification? How do you put it forward? What is it going to be used for? Because if we try to explain here that you can own your own idea, or your like self-sovereignty, right? It just doesn't calculate. Like, for them, it just flies above their heads, right?
Well, the SSI industry has always, I think, kicked itself quite a bit for calling it self-sovereign identity.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you. Do you think that there's a principle of minimal disclosure that most people would agree with regardless of culture? Meaning, I'm willing to share with you whatever information is appropriate for this interaction, right? Whether I'm a customer, whether I'm a student, whether I'm a church member or anything else, would you agree that there's a common understanding and appreciation for minimal disclosure?
Of course. I mean,
so
as
this
long
is,
as I understand the why, right?
Yeah, sure. So, there's always a decision when you as an individual choose to enter into a relationship. If I'm choose to become an employee, I'm going to have to do this. If I choose to become a customer, I may have to do that. I'm sure I cannot become a customer of every business I wish I were a customer of. Some of them require me to make big payments to buy their products, and I don't get to be a customer of them. But the point I'm making is that I think putting the nomenclature of SSI aside, we're in this like messy hybrid state right now where digital doesn't work like physical. Physical is trying to go digital, but it's all kinds of broken. We have most of our, I don't know how it is where you are, but I think many of our records where I am are still paper, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
So we have this whole like proofing process where we're going from physical to digital, like timeless numbers of times, because we don't have an ability to hold a digital document that can be independently verified. And this is why the technology is super exciting, because it finally gives us the tools to build user experiences in digital that work kind of the way people expect them to. But there's still a lot of work to be done on the UX of wallets and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch up on that again, for me, from my point of view, the data set is already with the local governments, right? Normally people are recorded there. There is an ID. There is a verifiable baseline. The approach would be to use that data and provide that data when required by service providers to the limit of discretion. How much of this information do you have to give, right? Or it's just about connecting the dots that, okay, this is the same person. Looking at zero proof knowledge, for example, you don't need the whole information, a bit of it, and then it's able to sort of like pinpoint, okay, this is the right information, this is the right person. End of the day, sovereignty for me, it's very difficult to imagine because our world is governed by governments, right? And we elect the government somehow for those democratic countries.
Yeah, but I think you're kind of going off in a direction I don't think I'm in agreement with. That
yeah,
you're not going in a direction opposite from me.
No.
I think we have to recognize that data is becoming ever more present, ever more growing, and the technology by which we handle and manage data doesn't work that well. And so it's not about the government having your ID and already knowing who you are in the surveillance capitalist state. Like, these things are what they are. I'm not saying that SSI is going to remove, these things that you may not like from the world, right? Decentralized identity technology just makes it possible to do things with data that were not possible before. That's really all it is. And a lot of those things are quite exciting, like being able to just share proof that I'm over a certain age to get into a bar. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. If we're handling data in these ways, the applications are in supply chain, they're in healthcare, they're everywhere. And now with AI coming online, our need to be able to verify that you are who you say you are on the other end of the connection is becoming even more important. And so that's where DIDs and verifiable technology comes in. It allows you to do those things that are otherwise more complicated to do.
Okay.
Yeah,
before we
I agree
continue,
with that.
sorry, Nicholas, I want to because we have some people that asking questions. So I just want to remind first that it's a very interesting conversation. I was like very drawn into it. I just want to keep you guys talking. Like, this is even more interesting than the prepared questions. But just want to remind the audience, if you want to ask question, please ask it in the Q&A box. We have some people already asking questions. Yeah, feel free to, and then after the session we will go through your questions and Tony and Nicholas will answer one by one.
So there's a question here which I think is important, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what is decentralized identity, and fundamentally it's three things. So it's the DID, it's the verifiable credential, and I added the third one, which is DIDCOM, because that gives you the ability to have a communications channel. So the DID is, one way to think about it, it's the evolution of a public-private key pair. Public-private key pairs are very powerful. This is how you prove that you own cryptocurrency on blockchains. But you don't want to have to give away your public key to someone so that they can verify some data, or that so that you can set up a connection with them in the future and know that you're the same person now that you were then. And this is where the DID comes in, and this is why the digital to physical is always where things can kind of be confusing. How you establish a DID pair connection between you and another person, or between you and another entity, is very important. If I meet you in person and we establish a DID pair, in the future, we can now do DIDCOM, where we have a guaranteed connection to each other that's secure. And it's very powerful. If you can establish DID pair connections digitally, like right now, I could show you a QR code. our wallets could connected pairs, and then we have forever a private, secure communications channel. That's very powerful. Verifiable credentials are just now on top of that. So now I can, over this DIDCOM channel, where I know it's you, or I know it's my bank, or I know it's my doctor, or what have you, we now have a private channel to share data. Now, I may have a whole bunch of new data about my health status, or about my legal status, or my whatever status. There is mountains of data that's coming. And I may want to be able to share that with my doctor digitally. And so this technology starts to open up just new ways where data can move around, where we're not always trying to deal with centralized repositories where the data is behind VPNs and all these mountains of security, because centralized repositories of data are very dangerous and they're also hard to work with. So this decentralized identity paradigm allows data to move around more easily, but also be secure.
Indonesia
Nicholas, you
will
have
need
to
that.
add to that? Okay.
Yeah, this evolution must happen, and it must bring all the stakeholders, right? Because, for example, in our country, we have all these centralized data points, data sets from different governments, and they've been hacked before, multiple times. We've had our social security hacked. We've had our telecom information hacked. We've had our even our our fuel data, because they were stored, that was hacked. The thing is, we don't have anyone in the streets. We don't have anyone complaining. We don't have anyone screaming on top of their lungs saying, "I don't want my data to be offered on the black market." Right? Nobody's in the streets. So I'm just saying that it needs to evolve.
I'm so glad I'm not in the position of selling SSI anymore, because look, this technology is going to make it out there.
Yep.
What I love about Web3 experiences is many of those experiences, I don't need to provide a username and password. It's pretty nice. And when you recognize that based upon that with some additional technology, you start to get an entire customer e-commerce experience is now possible. It's not going to be the government that does this stuff. It's going to be innovators that recognize this is a better user experience. Like that's what it's going to be. And I think we're starting to see some wallets adopting this. We're starting to see a lot of movement in education. There's more innovative kinds of applications of this. I'm seeing some applications in supply chain, but it'll take some time. I think also looking for ways to apply this to your business to provide better customer experiences. Just get rid of usernames, passwords altogether and start offering experiences where you're not needing to take and hold data because you get it from them when they come back. And imagine how much better online experiences could be. And I think growing metaverses, metaverses are struggling. The entire Web3 movement needs to be driven by us. It's not going to be driven by the government or big tech, right? It's the people who benefit from decentralization, not the big centralized entities.
Yeah, the reason why I'm in this space is because of what you just said, right? It's basically giving back power towards due and the people. But I also need to be pragmatic because, currently we'll be releasing our own wallet, non-custodial wallet here in Indonesia. And we try to provide as much utility as possible for token holders and future token holders. But everything is made in a way that you actually have to work with these centralized government bodies. For example, right, we have the capabilities of very quickly transacting crypto for everyday use cases, right? We can do it. The technology is there. But when we discuss this with representatives, then they're like, "Oh, you need to make it complicated. You need to make it super complicated so that people actually understand what's happening," right? So our solution was, okay, fine. If you want to use tokens to pay for everyday things, for example, then we first need to take your token, select your token, swap it into an IDR or a local fiat. Then it needs to be moved to either your e-money or it needs to be moved to your bank account. Then you can transact, right? Because the receiving end must receive in fiat format. And then the other one is, oh, if you're interacting with a centralized exchange in Indonesia, or you're interacting with a withdrawal off-ramp, you need to KYC your users. There's no other way around. So we are forced to actually implement this into the, sort of into the wallet, right? And we actually have to implement, SSOs, Gmail, Facebook, all this type of stuff. Why? Because that's just what makes it easy for users to actually log in, right? If we were to dump them all this, okay, you can now basically have ownership without ever having to give a username or a password, for example. They just don't get it. Right?
If you're a wallet, you're only one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Right. Like
definitely.
It's not your job as the wallet to figure out how to build an SSI ecosystem. Right.
No.
It's potentially an opportunity for you as a wallet. If someone is building an SSI ecosystem, they'll need a wallet. But these SSI ecosystems, they are starting. I mentioned the Maori. Also, the government of Bhutan just announced their digital identity initiatives. The EU has like an entire pretty significant motion around all of this technology. And the EU wallet and their digital identity standards are all very, very positive, for this technology, these technology standards.
We'd love to use them. We'd love to have them as one of the core benefits, right?
Here's what I've been trying to push in California. So I was one of the founders of the California Blockchain Advocacy Coalition in 2018, and we passed several laws, including some related to decentralized identity. And first, just a side comment, I think the entire Web3 and now I'll say crypto industry really, I think, went too far with the financial services narrative, because it was becoming pretty obvious that those powers that be in the, whether it be the central bankers or the governments or Wall Street or commercial banks, their interests are not aligned with cryptocurrency being the new kind of money, right? It's an existential threat to their business. And I think we've certainly, from the US perspective, where I sit as an entrepreneur, they've done a pretty good job of quashing the industry. And I think there's so much more to this technology than just financial services. And I think the industry needs to focus more attention on finding those and showcasing the benefits of decentralized technology beyond financial services, because I don't see them relinquishing the fight or reducing the barriers and the friction to new user onboarding that you're experiencing. And we had been pushing in California the idea of a portable KYC credential so that an individual could KYC one time. And now they can use that to verify with a number of DeFi providers. And this is something I'm still interested in, and something I'm still working on. But these kinds of things are very, very slow.
So we actually have that approach here right now from one of the government bodies, introducing. So we have access. We're going to have access to a sandbox that allows us to play around with this technology. But essentially, you don't need to KYC multiple times. You just need to do it once. And then essentially there's some way for all of these different service providers to verify without you having to provide information at the same time, which is what's happening now, right?
Right. So that could be a federated service, which many of these are federated kinds of services where there's still a centralized actor
I mean,
that's serving as a custodian.
Indonesia is
Yeah.
looking for a way to do this between all the different government entities that they have. They don't have interoperability. Everyone has different data sets. Everyone's building on different things. And they want to be able to sort of like, okay, how can Indonesian citizens have, the same credentials for all of the government services, right?
Have I mentioned how much I love Indonesia? I've been there a few times. I've surfed in the Mentawais
Nice.
a couple of times. Yeah, I've been on boat trips. So if you need help in Indonesia with deploying any of these kinds of technologies, I would love to find a way to come out and work with you.
Of course. Maybe this is the beginning of a collaboration.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, guys, so we that was a very interesting discussion, and now we are leaning toward the Q&A sessions. There's a question from Samuel. Hi, Samuel. So for both speakers, I catch that the ID can be borderless and very powerful. I think we talk. You guys talk about it. Maybe if you can repeat it again or make some sort of like conclusion. So, because Samuel is concerned if government regulation will limit this advantage of the technology that the possibility of this technology. And he's also quite new to this concept. So yeah, do you think like government regulation? I think, in my opinion, to some extent, of course, it will limit it. But what do you think, Nicholas? Maybe more into the Indonesian context.
Well,
Of,
let me answer the question about the DID, because I think there's just confusion about the DID. So
okay. Oh, I thought you answered it. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, because he's asking about the borderlessness and government regulation.
Yeah, borderless.
DID. I think it's important to keep in mind that a DID is really just a string of numbers. That's all it is. It's an identifier, right? It's a universally unique identifier. That's all it is. So it's a standard by which you can reliably create a unique identifier. And so if we make them, then we swap them, and then we connect later on, like I can verify that that's you. So the technology is already a standard. It's the applications where the governments come in and regulations come in. So trying to apply this technology to satisfying KYC or satisfying, different regulations, this is where the work needs to be done. It's work I'm doing in California with the regulators here to make it so that this kind of technology can satisfy regulation and make it easier for DeFi operators.
So that's work that I'd like to discuss with you, Tony, through the wallet, because essentially the wallet will be the vehicle that connects all of these different services, right? So, and if we're able to integrate this technology directly into that non-custodial wallet, we might change the narrative, because right now, yes, the most use cases is KYC, and the DID is basically a digital version of sort of your driver's license, right, or something like that. Right? It's a digital version of it. So the thing is, where we are in our part of the world, rights to privacy is not as pushed as it was in Europe or in the US, right? That's sort of the narrative that, or the component that needs to be discussed whenever we're talking about this. It's just that in Europe, for example, where I come from, information is protected, customers are protected, they have rights, and these rights are implementable, and they go very, very far. In our part of the world, it's just not the case, right? They use this pretext of rights of the customers or the consumers, but then they twist it in a way that it puts them into advantage. So, for example, implementation or sort of scalability of Web3 in Indonesia is only limited to NFTs, essentially. I mean, today we're limited to NFTs and we're limited to having crypto as an investment vehicle. There are no other utilities that are being pushed. The only utility you can do is within supply chain or private networks, right? Things that are completely isolated from the main market. So we have 17 million crypto holders in Indonesia. probably the biggest one in Southeast Asia. But there's no way for these crypto to go anywhere. And there's no usability, no use case. So, and that's because the government here, the regulation is sort of like not understanding the technology, not understanding where this can go, how they can benefit from it. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want this, decentralization is basically, so that's something that when we are talking about this type of stuff here for Indonesia, there's always that parameter to look into. And I think you know this, you've been to Indonesia before, the country is, very open, we're very welcome, but as soon as you get into, foreigners working or whatever, then sort of see the clamps coming. So, yeah.
Okay. I think that more or less answered several questions on how government will somehow interfere with the progression of this technology. We have another question from anonymous attendee. Hello, anonymous. The question is, how far privacy data that will include to digital ID? And is this impact the way people KYC the subscription into government matters and other things? I think we talk about it too, right? A little bit about how it will transform the way people do KYC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to answer it again, or I think?
I think you should have listened anonymous attendee answer. Okay, so because we have quite a lot of questions, we want to make sure that we answer all of them. So there's a question from Imam. What's your opinion about Galaxy passport verification so far? Does it save as KYC on-chain ties to our wallet?
I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah, Galaxy. Wait, let me go. Passport.
So Tony, when was your last time in Indonesia surfing?
Way too long ago. Probably 2000.
Were you in Bali or in other parts of us?
So I went 2004 to northern Sumatra on a boat.
Wow. 2004.
So it was actually the year before that tsunami. So I was there the year before that. Yeah. Surfed it. Then I surfed in Bali, like Uluwatu.
Yeah.
I love it. I really I would live there if I could. But my kids are here.
if you can come over for the surf first, and then afterwards we can look into how we can work together, collaborate for this. But come for the surf, man.
Oh yeah.
I haven't been in the water for some time myself, so.
Me too.
Yeah, but by the way, guys, I think a Galaxy passport is another SSI product. So yeah, maybe because you're not familiar with it, maybe we can go to the next question first. From Theo. Hi Theo. In what ways can decentralized digital identity solution address the challenges of identity theft and unauthorized access more effective? Yeah, because just a little bit like to share, like Tony, like Indonesia, like for example, me as a citizen, I don't know who has my phone numbers because I never. I got too many messages from provider that I don't subscribe with, for example. Like I'm not sure, like maybe is it like something that is my data being sold, or who parties has, it's impossible to track. We got scams every day. People try to make me gamble, people try to sell me stuff. So yeah.
I can answer that. I can answer that question if you want.
Okay.
Because we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Essentially, I can tell you right now that I can get 6 months historical on your bank statements. I can get 6 months historical on your telecom. I can get 6 months historical on your BPJS social securities, and it is going to cost me $1.2. And I have all your data, and I can do it now. Like I can just open up the website and I'll just do it now.
No.
That's how crazy. I can even.
Could you share your screen, please?
No. I can even like capture data from your consumerism. So I can know data from e-commerces and marketplaces that you visited. So I can build this. I mean, the reason for us we're interested in that data is because we actually want to look into building a new credit score, which is fusing Web3 data and then fusing Web2 data somehow. Why? Because there are security issues and there is no like one identifier with multiple verificators that says that this is really you, right? And did you ask for this loan or not? Because to give you some context, Tony, right, what she's talking about is essentially here we have what we call online lenders, right? Online lenders, which they basically request your ID, right? And then what happens is there is no sort of like verification saying that this ID has been used for this loan, right? So what happens is a person would be able to find your ID somehow using either the black market data that's available right now. And then basically they can just go on a loan provider and say, hey, this is my ID and I need $7,000. And essentially this is my phone number and this is my bank account. So the loan provider will just say, okay, fine, I have your ID. I know how much you want. I have your phone number so I can verify. Then I verify phone number is the same ID as the ID you gave me. And the bank account is also the same ID that you gave me. So fine, I'll send you the money now. So what happens is the lender will actually send money to a new bank account, to a bank account of the ID holder without the ID holder even knowing that that person used his ID, right? And the problem happens when you get the money and when you actually use the money for some reason, right? Then you're liable to that loan provider to basically pay back the whole thing. But what happens is the person that hacked your ID will say, hey, I think money was sent to your account wrongly. For some reason, I need you to send back the money, right? And then the person that received the money will say, oh yeah, this is not my money. I just checked my bank account. So basically that person will transfer the money to that fake account essentially. And the moment they do that, then they're liable for the loan. So it's just crazy how data circulation in Indonesia on this type of private things is so readily available. So if we were able to create a blockchain-based new credit score, completely different from the one that we have now, which is exactly the same as the one in the US, it's 1950s, right? That 384 score till 700 something score. Then the idea for us is to safeguard these identities and safeguard these people, against essentially data theft and pushing them in a position where they take loans that they didn't want in the first place. But more importantly, it's also allowing them to have cross-border credit scores. Because right now, what you don't have is credit scores do not cross-border. So if you build a good credit score in Indonesia, you go to the US and you want to build a business, you can't. Your credit score is basically zero. So you have to start from scratch. And we're living in a global world. We're talking about global citizenship. We're talking about, ID that is sort of like being able to be used across the world through multiple service providers. But the very basic thing that allows people to get loans for cash flow needs or for other needs is just not cross-border. Right?
Well, so, you're talking about a few different things. So the example you gave of the lender giving money to the wrong person.
Yeah.
What is broken there is the verification of that ID.
Exactly.
Right. So again, it's like there's a physical ID that's initiating a digital transaction. So like that's an attack point. Right. Yeah. So with the digital ID, the person is issued that credential to that DID. Again, that's a different. So a DID, it's simply the identifier. And it also has a public-private key pair part of it. So it does the cryptography as well. And the ID, whether that's a customer ID or I've done some checks and you're eligible for this much amount of lending, whatever the credential is, that's issued to a DID that's kept safe by the wallet. right? So your function as a wallet is to keep the DID safe and to keep the private key material safe. And now I have an ID that's been issued to that DID. So even if an attacker gets a hold of the credential and tries to present it, they're unable to sign it.
Exactly.
That it belongs to them, right? So the cryptography protects from theft of the credential. And then upon presentation of the ID, the lender just lets the digital do its job, right? It's a digital to digital to digital. I have a digital ID, you're doing a digital verification to initiate a digital transaction. And that's where you want to get to. And I think the wallet's function is really to protect, ultimately, it's the private key material. And
that's exactly where we want to get to as well.
Yeah.
Completely agree with the whole line there. That's one of the ways we can fix this issue, because it's rampant, right? And it's happening every day. So
the other thing you mentioned that I wanted to touch on before we run out of time was acceptance. So you talked about how you can build up your credit score in Indonesia, then you go somewhere else, right? And what's missing there is, and this ultimately boils down to governance and acceptance between ecosystems.
Yeah.
And this is something I think we're starting to see a lot of really positive progress in education on this. And really what it boils down to is, how do you assess a person's reputation to make a decision, whether that's to let them into grad school or to give them a loan. Like ultimately that's the core pattern. It's I'm assessing a reputational score basis upon some algorithm for some certain decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because if we're talking on that subject, we do have staking protocols in Indonesia to get loans from Web3, even though you're a Web2 user, but it's all over collateralized, right? So you essentially need that over collateral before you actually have access to that loan. If we're able to build a new system, a different system that is protected, to be transparent, that is accountable, the idea is to not have to have over collateral, right? So that people can actually be able to get loans and creditworthiness that actually functions. And the rating should not just comply with, okay, how much credit cards do you have? What credits do you have already ongoing to build a credit score? But it's actually like rewarding you on things that you do, like how well you pay your house, for example, as rent, how well you pay your school, how well you pay your phone provider, or those type of things. And no one's rewarded for that. Yeah.
I think if government or enterprise are interested in buying these services from us, we should talk to them. Otherwise, don't waste time. We should be building in our own ecosystems. Pick an L1. I don't care. I like Cardano just because I've been working there, and like they all have the same problems to solve. The usability of Web3 is it's absolutely terrible. And like, let's fix it with our own stuff first, right? Like, make it possible to have a reputation within the funding ecosystem that your L1 has. I know Cardano has, Catalyst. I think there's other funding ecosystems. They all have the same problem of, I want to propose an idea. I probably don't want to give up on my identity just to do that, because I'm a Web3 person and I know there's technology that should make that possible. And I'm comfortable with a wallet. And so we can start getting these use cases worked out. Unveiling this technology on the public right now, like it's just not ready for it, right? Like it doesn't work quite good enough yet.
Yeah, I also want to input another question from the audience to add to the discussion. We only have around 7 minutes left, so maybe this is going to be the last question. But Anonymous asks about the big tech Web2 company, for example, like Google, who owns like maybe most of the data circulating around internet. In which state are they right now in using the ID, or if they're not using it at all, like how it actually is quite in line with what you just talk about, Tony, like how Web3 company will challenge them in the industry. That's the question.
Well, I think it's a paradigm shift away from centralized big tech. And the Web3 movement, it's more than just a technology movement in my view, right? It's a social movement. It's about the world working a little bit differently than it's been pushed to work, in large part because of big tech, I believe, but also other forces. And we want to have more ability to have control over our data, over our assets, if we choose to, right? Like a lot of people argue that people are okay giving up their privacy or giving up this or giving up that. No, this is the way it works here. That's fine. But I think the technology should give people at least the choice. So when you're building a system, you can choose to build it with privacy by design if you want. I'm not saying that we're going to require people or that we have to force Google to adopt Web3 principles, because likely they're not going to, right? The way these tech companies make money, they've been built over the past 20 years or so on primarily advertising revenue dollars, which requires capturing lots of data. So I think it's more about a paradigm shift for how the world should work when digital and physical are more tightly intertwined and working better together than they do now.
Nicholas, you have something to add to that?
Yeah,
There's no way Google would ever implement that solution.
Fundamentally, Google's job is to sell your data, right? Google knows that person that the question anonymous, that Google knows him better than his mother knows him. I'm pretty sure. That's just the reality of it. Right? You have your offline traceability, but you also have your online traceability, which basically is much, much broader and much bigger. The question to be asked is, what is the advantage for Google to? What is the benefit, the incentive for them to do that? Right? Currently, today, the way their business model is set up is for profit company. I don't really see.
Nicholas, you're breaking up a bit. Can you try speaking?
Yeah. So
it's still breaking up. Maybe you can change the speaker. I think it's your earphone. Sometimes it did that to me too.
Sure. So I think Google has done some implementations of some infrastructure tooling for Web3 kinds of tech, but I don't think they'll ever drive consumer adoption, right? That's our job. So.
Yeah.
Do you think if that become the new norms that they will also need to comply, right?
Again, it's a paradigm shift. It's shifting from a world where we're okay with login with Google, and if you lose your Google account, you can't log into anything anymore, like to a world where that doesn't happen anymore, right? You just have control over your login, and we're starting to see those experiences in some of the L1 Web3 ecosystems, right? Like I can run around a lot of Web3 apps and stuff without ever logging in, and because they can interrogate my wallet, they can show me my stuff and give me custom experiences based upon what they're offering in their community. So it's already, I love the saying, the future's already here, just it's not equally dispersed, right? In L1 ecosystems, we're starting to see the future of user experiences, but we're probably not going to ever get them we're certainly not going to get them first from the banks or from, healthcare or from big tech, right? They're going to come out of innovators, like Nicholas.
Big tech is not going to be the catalyst for this change or this shift. It will come from people like Tony. It will come from ecosystems such as what we have today here. All the people talking on FolksFest, right? It needs to. We're in this for a specific reason. There are different stakeholders have different reasons. Right? But for us, it's always trying to empower or enable the user. Be as consumer-centric as possible, customer-centric as possible. What do they need? What do they want? How they want it? And one of the reasons that we wanted to build this wallet that is 100% non-custodial, that basically safeguards them and make it also easy. It's just the first step, right? Then we do understand that going forward, we need to implement, privacy by design somehow. But right now, the easiest way for us to bring, non-Web3 native people onto the space and bring even more, validation, then yeah, Gmail access and Facebook access or Twitter access is the easiest one to go for now, for today. But I'm interested to discuss with people such as Tony to say, hey, how can we build privacy by design going forward, and slowly but surely taper out of this ecosystem and have them have their own data set on their own and give it to whoever they want to give it, whenever they want to give it. It's their decision, right? And if they do, they don't have to give the whole information if possible. So, I think it's within our mission to. It's within our mission to basically enable that. And Indonesia's first use cases for Web3 was crypto, and the first thing that the people wanted to do was how can I move money without getting detected? So, it comes back to the same thing.
Yeah. That's wait a moment. So yeah, that actually that answered the question. Of course, there's so I'm become curious that if, of course, like there are a lot of people like Tony that will be the catalyst of the movement, but do you think like whose support that we need the most then to make it becoming mass adoption, if not government and if not big tech, or it be just like be fully community driven?
It's like every new technology innovation ever. It's going to be the innovators building better products and eventually
And the crowd will follow.
proving their products are better to real customers. And we have real customers in Web3, right? We have Web3 is a really cool ecosystem. There's lots of people in there that believe in the movement and are willing to try new things just because they want to help it move forward. So I think there's a lot of positive developments, and it just takes time for new technology to be adopted. But I think we're on a good track. I think the whole crypto industry's aggressive push into financial services like set it back probably a few years.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tony. Nicholas, we're ending we're nearing the end of our discussion. We have 4 minutes left. Before we end the session, I would like to say thank you for Tony and for Nicholas for sharing your thought. And before we end it, maybe we can have we talk about many things, right? About the government regulation, about data privacy, about where we are right now and what exciting things that we have in this realm in the future. If you have maybe some closing statement, something to share to the audience if they want to learn more about where their data is, maybe, or to learn more about the ID and SSI, maybe you can share a little bit before we end the session. Maybe with Nicholas first, and then Tony.
Sure. For me, it's not just about technology. It's about mindset, right? You first need to understand the mindset. So for me, it would be to stay curious and to always push the envelope. Technology is there. It's just how you implement it. Is it the right time to implement it? Is it the right stakeholders for you to work with to implement it? So I guess this Web3 space is, evolving faster than Web2 space, right? Somehow it's one day is like 1 month, right, in Web3. So there's always new things popping up all over the place, right?
Yeah.
For me, the first thing that I want to fix from my point of view is basically bringing new users onto Web3 in a very simple manner that makes it easy for them to explore Web3 and sort of make it their own. Once they understand the fundamentals, once they understand how it works, because the vehicle that they're using, so the Web3 wallet that we're currently building, the vehicle that they're using, will make it easy. Then we can sort of layer on top, right? Okay, so from here, what are you interested in, in doing, right? Like what services are you interested to do? And then we start introducing all of these different technologies, and eventually we will stumble on the value of their identity. They will stumble on it. They will sort of like, why do I have to give my ID when actually I don't? Right? How do I give my information without actually giving the whole thing? Right? So eventually they'll discover that. So in my opinion, all the builders in Indonesia or in the region, they should just always be curious and try to implement the latest thing and see and try it out and see if somehow it picks up. But I think our customer base is very utility oriented. So if you don't have utility, then there's just no interest. So it's more about how do we build utility, and then slowly but surely we move into that identity sovereignty, or like personal ownership of your identity. I think that's, for me, it's just stay curious and always push the envelope. And there are other solutions out there. Google doesn't have all the solutions, right? There are other solutions. There are thinkers like Tony. There are people across the world that are always trying to find other ways, and we should work with them more. We should find a way to work internationally and be able to release these services here. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Nicholas. Tony, you want to add to that amazing closing speech?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me today. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll just type it in, Tony Rose 023. My DMs are open.
Yeah, I think it'll be good for you guys to also connect. Interesting to see, maybe you can, do great things together.
Absolutely. And I shared a link to the book that we developed when I was the head of product at Atala Prism. So you can buy the NFT book from book.io, and the funds that you spend, it's I think 15 ADA or something like that, goes towards student scholarships. So definitely check that out. It's a very great primer on SSI and decentralized identity. And the other thing I shared was a prompting tutorial that I wrote on different prompting techniques, like a foundational prompting course for ChatGPT and other LLMs, but it's on the Worked platform. So this is actually a Web3 platform. So you can go there, you can take the courses, you get a certificate when you complete. It's quite a cool little adapt that team has built with Worked. So definitely check that out and build an avatar in the DAOgen and join us next week during our AI music TV show. It's an AI music video show. Yeah, let me give you a link to it, just since I have you.
Okay, we'll definitely check that out. And
here,
we actually
just before I hopped on here, we recorded our show for the week, so it should be up, and you can see my alter ego DJ Squirkle in action.
That's a good alter ego. Thank you very much, Tony, for sharing these links and resources. I'm sure our audience will have a good time exploring them. Once again, we need to wrap up the session. It has been a very interesting discussion. Nicholas, Tony, thank you so much for sharing your pitch, your thought, and your experiences to me and to the audience. There are still many sessions in the FolksFest today. This is the first. I think there are going to be still 10 more, or I think even more than that today. So make sure that you guys still stay tuned and go to the next session that's going to happen in the next 15 minutes to learn more about the topic that's going to be presented today. Tony, Nicholas, thank you so much.
Thanks
I will
for having
definitely
me.
connect. Thank you for your time. Definitely will connect with you guys after the talk. Thank you, and have a good weekend. Have a good Sunday.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.